Every Sunday morning for 12 years, a single father and his twin sons sat on the cracked wooden porch of a rented trailer, gluing balsa wood into wings, cutting soda cans into propellers, and painting dreams with leftover house paint. They never had money for store-bought toys, but they had stories, patience, and the sky. One day, their father whispered as he balanced a tiny wooden plane on his calloused palm. "You boys won't be building toys. You'll be flying the real ones." The twins laughed, not because they didn't believe him, but because the dream sounded too big for the little world they lived in. 25 years later, as a pair of sleek fighter jets soared above that same trailer park in a thunderous flyby, neighbors clutched their hearts and wept. The boys had returned, not with toys, but with wings. The twins never knew what a vacation felt like. Their summers didn't smell like hotel sheets or theme parks, but of engine grease, drying paint, and the faint scent of wood glue clinging to their fingers. Their world was a trailer on the edge of a forgotten airfield in rural Arkansas, where every dollar counted and every dream had to be carved out by hand. Their father, Marcus Ellison, wasn't a pilot. He wasn't even a mechanic. He was the man who swept hangars at the nearby county airstrip, pushing a squeaky broom across concrete stained by fuel and old stories. But to his boys, Noah and Nate, he was more than that. He was the man who turned scrap into wonder. Every evening after his shift, he came home with discarded parts, cracked propeller blades, broken gauges, even faded aircraft manuals with pages missing. Most people would have tossed them. Marcus brought them to life. Noah was the quiet one, observant, careful, always tracing the wings of every plane they saw in the sky. Nate was louder, bolder, constantly asking questions about lift, thrust, and how birds manage turns without flaps. Together, they were an engine and its wings, two halves that couldn't function without each other. Their ritual was sacred. Every Sunday, rain or shine, they spread out a blanket on the porch and built, not just toy planes, but hope. While other kids played video games or watched cartoons, the Ellison twins sanded fuselages, balanced center weights, and tested their designs in the alley behind the trailer. Sometimes the planes flew, sometimes they shattered, but they always rebuilt, stronger. "You know," Marcus would often say, holding a model up to the light, "aviation isn't just about metal and math, it's about feel. You gotta respect the sky before it lets you touch it." They didn't fully understand what he meant then, but they nodded. Because when a man speaks with love in his voice, children don't need logic, they just listen. What the boys didn't know was that Marcus once had his dream of flying, long before their mother left, before the factory layoff and the foreclosure. He had enrolled in a local aviation program, but dreams don't always get to land safely. When his wife walked out, leaving him with 2 infants and a stack of unpaid bills, Marcus sold everything, tools, textbooks, even his motorcycle, to buy formula and diapers. He buried his wings so his boys could one day grow theirs. And every time he handed them a tiny plane made of scrap, it was more than a toy. It was a piece of a dream he was passing down, silently, patiently, without ever asking for it back. By the time the twins turned 10, the sound of planes overhead wasn't just background noise. It was a kind of heartbeat. The boys could identify models just by the shadow they cast on the dusty ground, a Piper Cub fluttering low. That was Nate's favorite, the sharp silhouette of a Cessna 172. Noah could draw its undercarriage from memory. They didn't have cable, but they had the sky. Their trailer was barely held together. The kitchen faucet dripped. The heater rattled like bones in the winter, and the roof leaked every time it rained. But none of that mattered when Marcus came home carrying an old blueprint or a busted altimeter he'd rescued from the hangar's trash. And then there were the journals. Marcus had a stack of them, spiral notebooks filled with diagrams, flight theories, stories from pilots he met, and dreams he never dared to say out loud. When the boys couldn't sleep, he'd read to them like bedtime stories. One entry, dated August 12th, 2002, simply read, "One day, I'll see my boys in the cockpit. I won't be the one flying, but I'll be soaring anyway. The twins never saw that page, at least, not until many years later, but they felt its truth every time their father kneeled beside them, adjusting the rudder of a model plane or helping them sketch out how airflow worked across curved wings. In fifth grade, the school held a science fair. While most kids brought volcanoes or solar systems made from foam balls, Noah and Nate arrived with a hand-built glider that spanned nearly 6 feet. The wings were made from paper-thin balsa wood, the body reinforced with Marcus's old belt straps, and the tail had a quote scribbled in Sharpie. Flight is not about escaping the Earth. It's about understanding how to rise from it. When the judges asked how they built it, they simply said, "With our dad, and a lot of weekends." They didn't win, but a retired pilot in the audience that day approached Marcus with tears in his eyes and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You're raising more than boys. You're raising Skywalkers." That night, they celebrated with store-brand root beer and 2 candles stuck into a stack of pancakes. It wasn't anyone's birthday, but it felt like a beginning. Years passed, and the twins kept building. Their planes got bigger, so did their dreams. But the world outside was not as forgiving. In middle school, they were mocked for their hand-me-down clothes and greasy lunch pails. Some kids laughed at their fascination with aircraft, calling them hangar nerds or trailer pilots. But Nate, ever the fiery one, would square his shoulders and say, "At least I know where I'm going, and it's up." Noah would usually just smile, then go home and sketch new wing designs in silence. Marcus taught them how to channel pain into purpose. He never let bitterness grow in their home. "Let them laugh," he'd say. "Every storm passes, but the ones who fly, they learn to dance with the wind." And so they did. On the twins' 14th birthday, Marcus handed them a small box wrapped in duct tape. Inside were 2 tattered books, Stick and Rudder by Wolfgang Langewiesche and Weather Flying by Robert Buck. They weren't new. The pages smelled of time, but to the boys, they were treasures. "This is how you start," he whispered. "You read, you study, you respect the machine, and you keep dreaming, even when the world tries to ground you." They didn't respond. They just hugged him, long and hard. The real shift began on a winter morning when the wind bit through their jackets. And the boys, now 16, showed up at the county airstrip not to watch, but to work. They had convinced Mr. Delaney, the gruff old airfield manager, to give them part-time jobs sweeping hangars, cleaning oil stains, and fetching tools for mechanics who barely looked their way. But the twins didn't mind. Each moment spent near a real aircraft was worth more than any paycheck. And every evening, they returned home smelling of jet fuel and possibilities. It was there that they met Captain Marlene Graves, a retired Navy pilot turned civilian flight instructor. She was sharp-tongued, silver-haired, and didn't believe in small talk. One afternoon, as Nate handed her a wrench and Noah scribbled notes on a clipboard nearby, she raised an eyebrow and asked, "You two ever think of actually flying one of these things?" They froze. Nate blinked. "Ma'am, we think about it every day." She didn't smile, but she nodded. "Then let's stop thinking." Captain Graves didn't take students easily, but there was something about the way the boys moved, how they treated the planes with reverence, how they asked smart questions and never cut corners. She saw in them what Marcus had nurtured for years, the soul of a flyer. But flying lessons weren't cheap. When she quoted the price, the twins didn't flinch. They simply went to work harder, extra shifts at the airstrip, mowing lawns on weekends, selling handmade model planes at the local flea market. Marcus, too, quietly picked up night shifts at a warehouse, never telling the boys. He just came home later, his knuckles more raw than usual. By 17, the twins had logged enough ground hours to sit in the cockpit for real. The first time Noah took the controls, he trembled, not from fear, but from reverence. "It feels alive," he whispered. Captain Graves grunted. "That's because you respect it. That's rare. Nate's first flight was different. He whooped as the wheels lifted off, grinning like a kid on a roller coaster. "We're doing it," he yelled. "We're flying. Noah!" From the trailer porch, Marcus watched their little plane circle above the town, his hands folded over his chest. He didn't say a word, but in that moment, his silence carried 1,000 prayers. And when the twins finally earned their student pilot licenses, they didn't frame them. They handed them to their dad. "This is yours too," Noah said. Marcus just stared, speechless. For a man who had built his son's dreams with scraps, this was the first time he saw those dreams take flight. Graduation was fast approaching. And while most seniors at Hartsville High fretted over prom and senior pranks, the Ellison twins had one focus: flight school. Captain Graves had connected them with a prestigious aviation academy in Colorado, one known for producing commercial and military pilots alike. But the cost was astronomical. Tuition, housing, materials. It was a number so high, Marcus didn't even repeat it aloud. Still, he told the boys, "Apply, let the world say no, but don't say it to yourselves first." So they did. They filled out every application, wrote essay after essay, poured their story into words like fuel into a tank. They shared about the porch-built planes, the trailer roof that leaked on rainy nights, the man who swept hangars just to keep their dreams aloft. They applied for scholarships, grants, anything with even the faintest promise. Weeks passed, then a month. Rejections trickled in like slow heartbreaks. Nate tried to hide his frustration by staying out late, working double shifts. Noah grew quieter. And Marcus, he smiled as always, but started eating less, offering up excuses that they didn't believe. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, folded in a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside, a single sentence typed in bold font: "The Ellison twins have been awarded the Northbridge Legacy Aviation Scholarship, full tuition, full board, and a place in the sky." For a moment, the world stopped. Noah's hands shook. Nate shouted and ran outside barefoot. Marcus sat down slowly, like his legs forgot how to hold joy. And then the three of them, father and sons, embraced in the middle of their driveway, under a sky that had once felt so far away. But the joy was quickly followed by a dilemma. The scholarship only covered 2 tickets to orientation. Only one parent or guardian could go. The twins insisted that Marcus should be the one. "You built us," Nate said. "You deserve to see what you helped make." Marcus hesitated. "Boy, I've never flown." That silence stretched until Noah placed a hand on his dad's shoulder and whispered, "Then come take your first flight. With us." 3 weeks later, for the first time in his life, Marcus Ellison stepped onto a plane, not as a janitor, not as an onlooker, but as a father watching his sons step into uniforms that bore wings. When they arrived at the academy, students and instructors alike turned heads, not because of the twins' backgrounds, but because of their hunger, their humility, and the way they carried a quiet fire in their eyes. Captain Graves sent a single message on the day they checked in: "Don't just fly, change the sky." The first 6 months at the academy nearly broke them. Flight simulations that lasted till midnight. Weather theory exams were harder than any math test they'd ever faced. And the physical training, it left even Nate, the more athletic of the two, gasping for breath on cold Colorado mornings. There were students with pilot parents, trust funds, and private tutors, kids who had flown internationally before they could shave. And then there were Noah and Nate, 2 boys from a trailer park who shared books, split cafeteria meals when their stipend ran low, and studied under flickering dorm lights like they had on their porch years before. What the other cadets didn't know was that hardship was their home turf. When a crosswind threw off a simulator landing, Noah stayed an extra 2 hours to dissect what went wrong, alone. When Nate failed his first navigation assessment, he didn't curse. He got back in line. "We don't quit," he muttered to himself, again and again, like a mantra drilled into him by Marcus and a dozen Sunday mornings with splinters in his palms. but even steel bends when pushed long enough. Noah began to withdraw. His confidence, once steady as a compass, started to waver. One evening, after flunking a critical test on airspeed calibration, he sat in the academy library long after curfew, head down, hands clenched. That's when Nate found him. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Noah didn't look up. "What if I'm not good enough?" "Nate, what if I love flying more than I can do it?" There was a long pause before Nate pulled a chair beside him and said, "Do you remember the model we built with Dad? The big one? The one that cracked on its first glide?" Noah blinked. "The B-17 replica?" "Yeah. Remember what Dad said when it fell apart midair?" "It's not failure," Noah recited slowly. "It's flight data." Nate smiled. "Exactly. So this isn't the end. It's just data. We adjust. We try again." That night, they stayed up, going over charts and equations, side by side, as they always had, one reading, the other sketching, switching roles without needing to speak, because the sky wasn't just their goal, it was their language. Weeks turned into months. The twins' names began rising to the top of the training boards. Instructors started referring to them not just as the brothers, but as future aviators with promise. But what set them apart wasn't just skill, it was the way they moved in sync. In formation flights, their timing was flawless. In emergency simulations, they read each other's cues with instinct, not words. "You two fly like you share the same bloodstream," their lead instructor said after a particularly grueling exercise. "We do," Nate replied simply. "It's called being twins." In their second year, they were chosen for a special project, an advanced formation team for live air shows. Only 4 cadets were cut, and for the first time, the Ellison twins weren't just learning, they were inspiring. Letters from high school classmates began to trickle in. Kids who once mocked them now asked for advice on aviation scholarships. Local news outlets picked up their story. One headline read, "From trailer park to takeoff, the Ellison legacy soars." Oh, but no article, no photo, no spotlight compared to one moment that came that fall, when the Academy invited family members for a ceremonial flyby. As the twins ascended in separate jets, diving into a perfect crisscross over the crowd, Marcus Ellison stood in the center of the viewing field, eyes brimming, fist clenched to his chest. He didn't say a word. He just watched his boys carve arcs into the sky like signatures. They weren't toy planes anymore, and they weren't just flying. They were proving that sometimes the smallest wings carry the mightiest dreams. The invitation arrived on aged letterhead, edged with gold, stamped with the insignia of the Colorado Aviation Academy. But it wasn't the paper that mattered. It was the name at the top. "Mr. Marcus Ellison, you are cordially invited to witness a ceremonial flight in honor of your sons, Noah and Nathaniel Ellison, top graduates and now licensed pilots of the United States Regional Air Cadet Program." Marcus stared at the letter for a long time. He read it twice, then once more. He traced the names with his fingers, gently, like holding something fragile. He had never imagined seeing their names like this. Printed, honored, airborne. The town had changed little since the twins left. The same faded diner signs, the same weeds curl up from sidewalk cracks. But word traveled faster than anything else in small places. By the time the ceremony was announced, the whole trailer park was buzzing. "Is it true?" Mrs. Cunningham from Lot 4 asked. "The Ellison boys are flying in?" "They're not just flying in," replied Mr. Jenkins from across the road. "They're performing." The Academy had arranged for the twins to lead a special flyby across their hometown, the very skies where they had once pointed at planes and whispered dreams. Now, they were coming home, not with model gliders or paper wings, but with real engines, with noise, with power, with pride. Marcus didn't own a suit, so the community pitched in. The pastor's wife hemmed the jacket. The retired tailor down the road pressed the shirt. Even the kids from the neighborhood chipped in to buy him a new tie, navy blue, like the sky just before dawn. On the morning of the flyby, Marcus stood near the same porch where he once balanced toy planes in his hand, but this time, his hands were empty, and his heart was full. People gathered in lawn chairs. Children clutched small flags. The local high school marching band lined the edge of the lot. They all looked up, and then they came. Two jets roared over the town, slicing the sky with practiced precision. They dipped low, banking in perfect formation, circling once. Then again, it wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration. We made it. A whisper ran through the crowd as the jets tilted in a synchronized climb. Some clapped, some cheered, but many, especially the elders who had watched the Ellison boys grow up, simply stood still, tears sliding down sun-warmed cheeks. Marcus didn't cry. He smiled, closed his eyes, and let the wind carry the sound of their engines through his chest like thunderous lullabies. That night, back at the trailer, the twins, now dressed in their formal aviation uniforms, sat with their father on the porch. Marcus looked at them, long and proud. "I used to build planes so you could dream," he said. "But you built wings I never knew how to grow." Nate placed a flight badge in his father's palm. "Then wear this. Dad, you earned it before we ever did." Marcus didn't speak. He didn't need to, because sometimes love sounds loudest in silence. After the flyby, the letters started coming in from schools, from youth groups, from single mothers and janitors, teachers and librarians. They all wanted to know one thing. How did two boys from a trailer park end up soaring through the sky? And the answer was always the same. Because someone believed they could. Noah and Nate never forgot where they came from. While many of their academy peers moved on to commercial airlines or private charters, the twins chose something else: service. They enrolled in the Civil Aviation Youth Outreach Program and became ambassadors, traveling to underfunded schools across the country, speaking not about engines or equations, but about belief. They'd walk into classrooms with faded maps and broken ceiling fans, and tell stories about building planes from soup cans and rubber bands, about sanding wings on a porch while their dad worked night shifts, about failing tests and trying again, about how skies are not for the privileged, but for the persistent. One day, in a small school in Mississippi, a quiet boy raised his hand after Nate finished his talk. "Mister, do you think someone like me could fly?" Nate smiled. "You already are. You just haven't taken off yet." Noah, ever the quiet dreamer, found another way to give back. He founded a nonprofit called Porch Wings, named after the wooden platform where it all began. Its mission was simple: supply free aviation kits, mentorship, and early flight training to children in low-income communities. The first shipment went to their old elementary school, the second, to a foster home in Detroit, the third, to a youth center in Arizona built near a reservation where few kids had ever seen a plane up close. Each kit came with a message, printed in their father's handwriting, scanned from one of his old journals: "Respect the sky, and it might let you touch it." Back home, Marcus had become somewhat of a local legend. Neighbors greeted him with smiles, newspapers ran his story, and young kids came by just to sit on his porch and build things. He never charged a dime, just handed them glue and belief. And on his 60th birthday, something happened he never saw coming. The boys returned, dressed in uniform, and invited him for a special flight. "But I've already flown," he said, chuckling. "Every time you two take off, I'm right there with you." "Oh, and this time," Noah said gently, "we want you in the cockpit." The jet was small, a trainer, but to Marcus, it might as well have been a starship. As the aircraft lifted off the runway, the world beneath grew small, quiet. The clouds welcomed them, and as Marcus looked out the window, gripping his son's hands, a tear finally escaped. He whispered, "Your mama would have been proud." And Nate, never one for stillness, replied, "She wasn't the one who built our wings. Dad, you were." 4 stories like this remind you of what matters: love, grit, and the dreams we pass on. Don't forget to subscribe. We have many more true tales to share. and they all begin with the heart. Not every child is born with wings, but some are handed glue, wood, and a reason to try. This is the story of two boys who weren't born to fly, but were raised to rise, and one father who never took flight himself, yet lifted his sons higher than any jet ever could.